Thank you, Roger, for that introduction, and thanks to Charlie and the Festival of Media team for inviting me here again this year. So I'm going to use data, as you can imagine, to take you through a review of what's being called the brave new digital world. And I am going to do it with a focus on the theme of the conference, which is from content to commerce. And there are two, I'm calling them emerging ways that value is being created in this world, but in a sense, one of them isn't really new, but it's certainly morphing into something a lot more powerful than it used to be, in my opinion. But the first one I think one can describe as new. Multi-platform media usage is creating new monetization opportunities, but it's also causing some challenges for publishers and advertisers alike. So I want to show you some data on that, and then I want to show you something that's really interesting, which is the growth of targeted digital advertising that's based upon not the more traditional ways of targeting advertising, but on a really holistic use of the buying information, both online and offline buying information, and show you where I think that's going to go. So let me start with the multi-platform review. So we recently introduced into the United States the first three-platform audience measurement system for the internet, and we're now in the process of rolling it out gradually around the world. Not easy to do, but we've done it. And when I saw these numbers, I thought that something had gone wrong in the processing, because it just didn't seem to be right, because it seems to have come out of nowhere. In the United States today, essentially 1 in every 3 minutes spent on the internet is coming from either a smartphone or a tablet. So by the way, when I use the term mobile here, with one exception that I'll note, I'm going to be referring to smartphones and tablets. So clearly, a publisher who isn't optimizing their properties for mobile is really running a big risk here. Same thing for marketers as they look at leveraging advertising on these new devices. They got to think a lot about how best to do it. And I thought that maybe one of the ways of illustrating to you the opportunity and the challenge is taking you a little of the data, okay? So this is United States data, and this is the top internet properties in the United States measured in terms of unique visitors across all the platforms. And I've color-coded it, so you've got the solid blue on the left is desktop only, and then the reddish block is people coming in using both a desktop and a mobile device to access it, and then you've got mobile only on the right. A couple of things to note about this. First of all is that the people that are coming in using, at some point, a mobile device, for many of these properties represents a half of all their visitors. I mean, that's how big this thing has become in a very short period of time. The other point to note is take a look at the light blue sectors on the right, which is the people who in a month are only coming in on a mobile device. So we've got apparently a situation where these devices, especially I think the phone, I'll show you that in a second, has expanded the consumption of content in some pretty dramatic ways. So let's take a look at, best way of addressing it is let's take a look at some different types of content. Let me start first, though, with the total internet. So here I'm looking back at February of 2010 and then updating it through February of this year. So we're looking at a 3-year period. And I want to show you how the total time spent on the internet is changing across these devices to illustrate how dramatic it is and how it varies across type of content. So here for the total internet in the United States, time spent is up 20% off the desktop. Smartphone, from virtually nothing 3 years ago, is now accounting for 308 billion minutes here, up almost 400%. And then you've got tablets, the more recent device, on top of that, and you add it all up, and you've got essentially a doubling of time spent on the internet in only a 3-year period. And I think, and I'll show you some evidence to support what I'm about to say, it really looks like these devices are driving incremental usage. And so it's not a zero-sum game at all. In fact, the pie is expanding. But it's expanding in really interesting ways depending upon the content that you're looking at. So this is weather sites, and same format as in the previous slide. You'll see that desktop here is off almost 50% versus 3 years ago. But that's more than made up for by the use of the phone to get at weather information. And in fact, time spent on the phone now exceeds the desktop. And then you've got tablets on top of it, put it all together, despite what looks like some cannibalization, you still got a total increase in consumption of 15%. More dramatic here with maps. So it used to be that you'd print out a map, at least I did, before going on a trip somewhere so that you had the directions. Well, that's off 13% over this 3-year period, and look at what's happened to phones. I mean, the phone usage is almost 4 times higher than the desktop for accessing maps information. And then you've got tablets on top of it. Put it all together, a massive 152% increase in time spent on map sites. Now, in both these cases I've shown you, there's some evidence of cannibalization of the desktop. But if we go to sports, which is the most heavily consumed content across multiple devices, here we actually have a 20% increase in time spent off a desktop. Again, almost a 400% increase in smartphone, but the smartphone you see is only about a half of desktop, but still contributing significantly. And then you've got tablets on the top. Put it all together, you've got a 70% increase in time spent. So it's really critical to understand, I think, for both the advertisers and the publishers, how these patterns of behavior are changing across these multiple devices if you're going to really assemble a multi-platform media plan that's going to be relevant. You obviously also have to have the information, and as I said, comScore is rolling out these databases around the world as we speak. So, since I just showed you sports data, let me stay with the sports theme and show you the results of a study we did for NBC in the United States around the London Olympics. It's called the NBC $1 billion Research Lab. I only wish they had spent $1 billion conducting this study. I'd be standing up here really smiling. Unfortunately, the $1 billion refers to the value of, I shouldn't say unfortunately, it refers to the value of the information. So here's the idea of this study. In the 17-day window of the Olympics, you have so much content being produced and so much content being consumed across multiple platforms that if you were able to measure it all, you might well be opening a window into the future of multi-platform consumption and get an understanding of how it will evolve as we go forward in time. So to do this study, we equipped about 1,000 people with our monitoring software and all of their devices and had all of their television sets wired as well so that we got television information as well and then measured it. So let me give you the highlights. First, TV is going nowhere. It's still king. I'll show you the evidence of that. Alternative screens were additive. No evidence here of a zero-sum game. No evidence that digital was cannibalizing television at all. Great news for the content owners. More ways in which they can monetize their content. Digital was actually complementing TV, and you could argue was driving TV. So in the US, the live events were being streamed, all content streamed live during the middle of the day, United States time, and then recorded transmission in the evening. And you might have thought that if somebody was watching live online during the day, that they wouldn't necessarily watch on television at night. The opposite happened. The greater the extent of viewing of the live streams, the greater the likelihood that you'd then watch television in the evening. Maybe this is a function of the nature of sports content, but we'll see. Social was amplifying an event. It was engaging viewers. And then this clearly emerged. The new normal, what we're calling multi-platform simultaneous use. Obviously watching television and being on some other kind of device at the same time and communicating with other people. And I'll show you quickly some of the data. So this is the television time, 89%, and the balance 11% accounted for by the different computerized devices. So TV accounting for the vast majority. Now this is probably my favorite slide, and I'll build it for you, and the way to read it is from left to right. So we're tracking people who only had a TV, people who had a TV and a computer, TV, computer, and a mobile device. Here, a mobile is referring to a phone, and then TV, computer, mobile, and a tablet. And we'll track how total time and then time on each device changes as you go across the spectrum of people owning different devices. There you go. So total time spent consuming this content increases with more devices. And if you are the TV content owner, this is fantastic news because as you can see at the bottom, the total amount of time spent with television also increases. So no evidence of cannibalization of television time as a result of the emergence of these multiple devices. I'm not saying, I'll stress, I'm not saying this is true necessarily of all types of content, but certainly it's true here for sports. Simultaneous viewers, just read this from top to bottom. All the Olympic followers then will define people who had a TV and one other screen, let's call that 100%. So people who were simultaneously watching TV and using another device were a half of all these people. And if you look at the time spent, 25% of all of the time spent was TV, and then TV in the second screen was about 25%. So it's an important sector. Demographically, we found a slight skew towards men, you'll see at the top. But if you look at the composition, interestingly, this is the percentage of each age sector that was engaged in this simultaneous viewing. No evidence that this was a skew towards younger people as one might have expected, which again, I think is very, very encouraging news for the content owners. Okay. Let me shift to the second point I wanted to make, which was the power of targeted digital advertising, which I think is increasing, and it's increasing because different data sets are now being used to drive this targeted advertising. And Rishad Tabakawala, just a few days ago, Chief Strategy and Innovation Officer at Viveki, said, and I thought this was apropos for what I was going to talk about, commerce has become marketing, and marketing has become commerce. And I want to take an angle of that, which I think is consistent with what Rishad was trying to communicate. And I want to show you that it's pretty clear that we are entering, or maybe have entered, an age where the use of data to target advertising is becoming a kind of a feedback loop. Because traditionally, you could argue that advertising drove e-commerce as advertising was delivered through different content owners. But it's pretty clear that what's now happening is that commerce data is being used to feed the targeting of advertising. And it's being used both in terms of offline buying behavior, so the credit card companies have that in spades, as well as we've got now the emergence of online retailers as advertising platforms. And the two best examples of that would be Amazon and eBay. Hopefully, this feedback loop from commerce to advertising doesn't run afoul of the privacy zealots, but that is certainly one thing that could screw up this wonderful cycle of demand generation. Now, it's been pretty clear, I think, to most people who follow targeted advertising that you get a higher lift if you can target it appropriately. And we've done a lot of work at comScore. I'm just showing you here the results for consumer packaged goods brands, where we're looking at the lift from online campaigns, the lift in retail stores. So to what extent was the advertising able to generate a sales increase within the people who got the advertising? No targeting on the left, purchase-based targeting on the right, and as you can see, the lift is about double. You sacrifice something in terms of reach, no question, but you get pretty dramatic increase in lift. The one issue to be a little concerned about, and I think the CPG folks are all over this, is you can narrow your targeting too much and lose serendipity, and to some degree, just as an extreme statement, we all eat, we all drink, and so you could argue that the potential market for many CPG brands is pretty broad. So you've got to be careful about when you use it, but it's pretty clear when you do, you will dramatically increase your lift. Now, let's go to the importance of sites like Amazon to advertising. All right, and I just wanted to contrast Amazon with Facebook. This is, I've put the numbers for them in terms of total visitors in a month on the right. So Facebook has a slight lead, 187 million uniques in a month, over Amazon at 164. And I think arguably one could say that Facebook is one of the best examples of a company that has tremendous amounts of information that they can use to target advertising. I think you can also say that Amazon has buying information in spades. I mean, they've got so much of it. In the United States, they are now accounting for 1 in every 6 e-commerce dollars that are spent. And so if Amazon becomes an advertising platform, they have the ability to really do a terrific job in terms of this targeting, and they are executing. This is the number of impressions run on Amazon.com, on all the Amazon properties. up 40% in just the past year. This doesn't include the ad impressions that they are delivering off of the Amazon site, which is also something that they are aggressively building. And financial analysts are saying that the margin on this kind of revenue, this ad revenue, is maybe on the order of 20 to 30% compared to margins about 5% or so on their basic commerce business. So it's a very profitable business for them. Financial analyst estimates for this year say that they should do maybe somewhere around $1 billion in revenue from advertising alone. And the advertisers that are attracting are not the people that you might expect. They're attracting both online companies as well as offline companies. I just highlighted two of them here, Procter & Gamble and Weight Watchers, who sell the majority of their products offline, but they're able to leverage the information that Amazon has to build their offline business. And it's pretty clear that if you do that properly, you can build your sales both online and offline. This is the result of hundreds of studies that we've done at comScore. The lift offline from online advertising, 27% lift, 17% slightly lower offline. The important point is, given how much bigger offline buying is than online, the absolute dollar increase from these campaigns is 5 times larger offline. And I think that helps explain why these companies that predominantly sell offline are attracted to a property like Amazon to run their advertising. But there's even better information available for targeting now, and courtesy of Kellogg's, I'm able to show you this, because we now have the ability to monitor the way these media plans are being delivered in real time and tweak the plans as they are being executed. So read this chart. Each row is a different publisher, and a media planner is able to understand the frequency being delivered, the degree to which the impressions are reaching the target segment, how many of them are viewable. That's the new emerging metric. That's an important one, and then the lift in awareness, and then you've got the CPMs on the right. And based upon this information, you can see by the arrow designation here, you try to put more money behind Publisher 1 and maybe see if Publisher 2 and 3 can address some of the issues that they've got in the red highlighted sectors or move money away. Is this working? Oh, it's working. And again, courtesy of Kellogg's, I can show you the increase they're now reporting in their digital ROI on 2 brands. 5 times, that's not 5%, not 50%, that's 5 times increase in ROI through monitoring and better targeting, 6 times on the other brand. So this whole world of targeted advertising, I think, is evolving for the better. And again, as long as we don't run afoul of some of the privacy issues that we face, here in Europe as well as in the States, I think we'll be in great shape. So to wrap up, I think there's good news for the way that marketers can succeed in the new digital world. Yes, stay abreast of what's happening here with multi-platform, because it is here in a big way. More screens, more overall consumption. It's not a zero-sum game. That's the good news. Both media companies and retailers are extending the reach of their audiences by the use of these different devices. And then the power of digital has always been in targeting, right? You go back to the origins of the internet, and that was one of the advantages cited. It's getting better. And I think it's getting better because you now are able to use a lot of buying and browsing data, offline and online, to drive the targeting. You got retailers that you can use as an advertising platform, very, very powerful. And you have the ability to optimize your media plans to increase your targeting accuracy, viewability, and ROI over and above what you can get if you simply use the information coming back from the ad servers. So I think, bottom line, this brave new digital world is one in which we can all be very successful if we stick close to our knitting and understand what's going on. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it.